Hello and welcome to Your Band Sucks at Business, a podcast on the business of running a band. My name is Malcolm Owenflood. I'm here with Marcus Manhas. How you doing, Marcus?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am, as we were talking just before we started this, on a new routine that I'm trying to break into where I'm getting up at 5 a.m. again. I'm actually doing it, listeners, because I said this like a month ago that I was going to get back on that. But now I have. And nice. I'm actually proud of how I managed to do it. My background changed. Uh-oh. Well, anyways, what I'm trying to do, and I got it on my phone anyways, is I made a little, I'll show you, Marcus. I made like a little calendar. Can you see that? Is it focusing?
Yeah. You can see it. Okay. Like is that an Excel screenshot or something?
I actually made it in Canva, but Excel would have been far easier for this. But it's just like, an hour by hour breakdown of my day from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I wrote in at each hour what I'm going to be doing during that hour. And then it's on my phone and it's going to be on my computer background. It was yesterday. I have no idea how I managed
it. Doesn't want you to do it.
Yeah. And then I just am constantly being reminded to stick to the schedule every day.
Nice.
Yeah. So
how's it working so far?
2 days in and it's working so far.
Nice. What's 5 a.m. to 6 a.m.?
5 a.m. to 6 a.m. is shower/coffee.
That's a long shower.
Yeah, but it's it's like a nice wake up period,
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I spent 40 minutes making coffee today.
That sounds pretty nice.
Well, I was experimenting because my brother bought me espresso beans for Christmas, which are just so strong in an AeroPress. So I've been trying to like dilute and make something me and my girlfriend can manage to drink. And it took like almost an hour to come up with something drinkable today. And
nice.
then shower, whatever, stretch, whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of wake up. And then I've got 6 a.m. is like read, write, and learn. So I'm just trying to do something good in that time, essentially. So like be that reading my book or doing some creative writing or just watching videos and like that kind of stuff to try and learn more. And then 7 a.m., I'm going through this whole list now, so we're buckle in.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to hear it. Let's go.
7 a.m. is my secret drum sample project, which is a new thing I'm working on with my buddy Diego Fernandez that I can't talk about yet, but I'll tell you Marcus later. Okay. And then obviously it's not that secret.
I'm going to tell all the listeners
what it is in the title.
Yeah, that was very sneaky.
Yeah. And then 8 a.m. is Your Band Sucks at Business. And obviously that's ironic because it's like 7 right now and we're working on Your Band Sucks at Business. So this is not an exact science, but things get moved around. Like, so I moved YBS to 7 today and the drum sample will be coming after it. That project will be after that. And even if we're not recording, I'm going to be working on the podcast or our Facebook group or whatever, all that kind of stuff, just on the Your Band Sucks platform. And then 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. are exercise. So I got 2 hours of exercise space, which is great, right in the middle of the day, which I'm it's like still morning, but
That's a good time though. That's a nice time.
Yeah, exactly. And then at 11, I break my fast and have breakfast.
Nice.
Which I'm finding is so far on day 2, like I'm already hungry. Might have to move that around.
4 hours to go.
But I hate eating right before exercising. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then 12 p.m. is a break/email hour. So I'm trying to not open up my emails until then, which I failed at today.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm going to batch all my emails. So just answer everything in the inbox in that hour. And then from 1 p.m. till 6 p.m., where I'm going to finish my day, I'm doing my audio mixing and mastering services and all that. And then I've got like on the last hour there's a /emails. So I'll just check my email box one more time before the end of the day, reply to anything pressing or whatever. What I need to add to this, though, looking at it, is I need to write in plan tomorrow at the end of it. So I can like make a little paper list of what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my day. If I stick to that every day, I'm going to get so much shit done.
Yeah, totally. No, yeah, that's awesome. That's really good. I'm going to make one of those now that you did that. I'm going to make myself one.
Dude, I love having it as the backdrop because I keep, you have like that muscle memory of just picking up your phone for some reason. And like looking at it, like everybody's got that. We're all trained to just be sucked into these things.
Just look at the background.
But now I click it and I see that and I'm like, put it down.
Yeah.
And
totally.
It's good reminders.
That's awesome.
That on the background of my computer and my phone. And I hope to be kicking ass. I did this last year and it really worked for me. So I kind of fell off eventually because you get sick of looking at this thing and you want a nice looking background. But for now, I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, no, that's great. You should definitely just power through it if it's ugly to look at. But you know what's good about that is it's almost discouraging to like, you don't even want to go on your phone after a while because you're just like, oh, fuck, I'm just going to look at that thing again.
Yeah, that actually reminds me. Apparently, you can take all of like the color out of your phone.
Yeah.
I got to try that. Just make my phone the boringest little fucking make it look like a Kindle e-reader.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I like that.
Awesome. Okay, that is not what this episode is about, though. This episode is about this recurring situation that's happened a lot through my career as a music producer, where there's like a solo artist who is unsure if they should be a solo artist, so more or less perform under their own name. Not that you have to use your own name as your solo artist moniker, but going solo or getting a band together and acting like you're a band. And the reason I'm bringing this up, we did kind of get a question related to this from our listener named Danny Blonde. Thank you, Danny. But this isn't really an exact answer to her question, but I think she'll get value out of it anyways. The reason I thought it was important is most people asking that question, even if they get a band together, are a solo artist and they've just surrounded themselves with musicians and are for some reason they're uncomfortable with the idea of being a solo artist. So they're giving way too much over to the musicians who aren't actually in, you know?
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, they don't want to be that front man or front woman, you know, who's like basically controls the band. It's kind of like the CEO vibe, you know? I think a lot of people want to, they're in a band because it's like a creative, or that they want bandmates because it's like a collective creative project, right? But in reality, they're probably, if you're asking this question, you're probably doing, you know, the majority of the work anyway. And so realistically, it should be you. And you should have like, you know, your group of support musicians basically. But anyway, we'll get more into it. But I think that that's where a lot of it stems from, is like not wanting to be that front man or front woman who's basically the controller of the band, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's seen as like a bad thing when you're starting. I feel like as a musician, when you're starting in a band, you hear of these, you know, these front people who absolutely they control everything, and it's kind of like it's a negative thing. But in reality, once you get more into it, you realize that that's how it should be.
yeah. If you're doing everything and you're writing all the music, it's your product, right?
Yeah.
So what makes it tricky though is that you don't have any leverage to try and like build a team or have like, why would these musicians want to put time into rehearsing and learning your songs if they're not getting anything out of it?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
There's a lot of advantages and disadvantages to consider. And that's what we're going to discuss this episode. Before we do, I want to quickly mention our Patreon tiers. And for those of you who don't know, we have a Patreon, which is a place you can go and sign up to become a member of our Patreon and support us. And there's some perks with each tier. And up until recently, there was only one tier, but now we've opened up a $5, a $10, and a $20 tier, all with different perks, including a private Facebook group, which is going to be launched today. I mean, it'll be launched when you hear this episode, it'll have been out for a week, but it's coming. And I'm super stoked about that. And if you want to check that out and you want to support us and you appreciate this content, you can head to patreon.com/yourbandsucksatbusiness or yourbandsucksatbusiness.com and just sign up for our email newsletter and you will find out about it that way as well. Anyways, back to the episode. Let's talk about some advantages, I think. Because I've got a bias where I want to convince people to really consider doing the solo thing.
Yeah, me too, for sure. And I think that's definitely changed for me, because I think if we'd gone back 4 or 5 years ago, I would be all in on the collective. But that's definitely changed because I think I've just realized how there's a big disparity between what I thought a band was when we first started it, you know, and what I realized the actual workload is, because it almost always falls on 1 or 2 people. And most of the time it's actually one. When you really dig into it, a lot of times the workload is one person and they're producing the majority of the content, doing most of the work, writing. Really, they're the manager of the band.
Yeah. Financially even.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely changed for me over the years. I definitely lean towards the solo, or at least the one person who's basically the main person in the band, and then you have a supporting cast of musicians who are hired.
Yes.
Of course, it depends on It depends on a lot of different things. But I think I see that more often now than I think I did 5 years ago. Now it's like, that's the way that I think bands should be structured for the most part. It does depend though. I mean, Band of Rascals, that was equal because it was a pretty equal workload.
Yeah, we tried to make it as equal as we could, and we wrote the majority of our content in the same room. And so that's like a very band format. And that was like how our branding looked as well, Band of Rascals.
Yeah,
silly
for
if we
sure.
weren't a band. But at the same time, if the music, let's take our singer Sam. He's a capable, talented songwriter and singer in his own right. And if he had wanted, he could have gone down a solo path. It would have been different than what Band of Rascals is.
Yeah.
By a long shot, right? But he could have gone that way. But in Sam's case, I think he's going to agree with me saying this. I'm putting words in his mouth, but I think he'll agree. He doesn't like doing the business side of things at all.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I don't think he would have any interest. I don't think he would have had any interest in doing that without our help.
Yeah.
Picking up that kind of side. And I think he probably liked the writing side as a group as well, right? There's like, it's a different thing. That's not really the situation we're talking about. But that's kind of, I don't know what I'm saying.
That's okay.
Essentially, you're going to have to look at your own situation. This isn't even something that a lot of people will have to even consider.
No.
If you're a band, you're probably a band. It's not really, this episode might not be for you, but you might still learn something from it. But who this is for is kind of, in the majority of the time, who this is for is the songwriter. The songwriter is the person that needs to be considering this.
To me, this episode kind of relates to, if you're asking, like I said, if you're asking this question, more than likely you should be solo if you're asking this question, because we never asked this question. And I think, the majority of bands who are already established as a band probably won't ask this question, and they don't need to really think about this. But I think if this thought is in your mind, there's probably a reason, and most likely the case is that you are doing the majority of the work, and that's why you're having this question. But yeah, let's go over some advantages of it though.
Okay, sounds good. So one thing that I really appreciate about the solo artist, especially the solo artist who goes under their own name, and a quick clarification, when you're a solo artist, you can still have a band. Like Marcus said, they're hired musicians at that point. So just dispel that. This doesn't mean that you have to play coffee houses with an acoustic guitar for the rest of your life. But there's a longevity to your marketing that happens when you use your own name, because no matter what happens, you're still going to have your own name, and that brand is going to continue to develop. So if you're like 20 years old right now and you start playing under your own name, when you're 30, that's 10 years of your name being out there releasing music and touring and stuff. Like, that's going to eventually start counting for something. It's just, your name's going to become more well known over time. It simply has to. Where if you start a band and you're 20, most bands don't make it more than a couple of years. 5 years is a long time. 10 years is a feat, right? And that's honestly, like, in year like 5 through 10 is when most bands start experiencing success. It takes that long, right? Now the band breaks up. That name doesn't get to come with you, really. Sure, you can put it in your bio, but like, nobody cares. So you've kind of like, you have to start over, and now you're trying to get people to listen to this new name, and people do attach themselves to names. So, I mean, if Matt Corby, my favorite artist, released under a band name tomorrow, it might take me a while to find him. Like, I might not, like if it popped up on like a list, I wouldn't click to listen to it because I just wouldn't know unless he somehow told me, right? So there's a huge advantage to the branding side if you're going under your own name, or at least like, because some solo people do go. 9 Inch Nails, for example, is kind of a solo project.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a band name, but it like, everybody knows it's Trent Reznor.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you can get away with having a different moniker, but I really think there is something cool about, or an advantage to just using your name. Yeah,
I think the name longevity is a really big one. And even if you don't use your own name, if you have like a stage name or whatever, it doesn't have to be your legal name, but that name is yours. And that's the thing, like, you can't really break up with yourself. So like, the name will come with you.
Yeah, it's for life.
I mean, it's not going anywhere if you don't want it to.
Yes.
Right? That's the thing with, if a band breaks up, the majority of the time you don't really have control over that.
Yeah.
That name. Like, that name kind of ceases to exist. Another really great advantage of being solo and hiring musicians to be as part of your band, the break-even point and profit point, which is it's obviously a way lower break-even point, and potential of profit is way bigger as well. Like you're not splitting it with anybody.
Yeah.
Down the middle or into 4, you know, like that really, you have to have 4 times as much revenue basically when you have 4 people to pay.
Yeah. I'm jealous that you stole this point because that's definitely, to me, that's the biggest thing to consider.
Okay, go. You go. Yeah.
No. We can both talk about it. It's fine. It's fine. But like the example that I like to think about is, say your band is making $100K a year. You're a 6-figure band. That's an amazing achievement. Like, holy crap, you've done it.
Yeah.
That still isn't enough to pay for you guys to go full time. You still can't go full time if you're a 4-piece, right?
Yeah, that's true. And that could be, that's $100K net.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so, you know, after your taxes, after your expenses, everything, $100K net, that is a large amount of money for like to gross $100K as a feed as well, but it's a lot more attainable.
Yeah.
Net, that's still $25,000 a member if you have 4 people.
Yeah, exactly. Which I mean, people do and can live on that for sure, but it's still, that's not a lot of money, and that's net, which is like really hard. Gross, you're not even close, right?
Yeah.
Gross, you've then got like just all of your touring expenses. There's so many expenses, you know. So like, let's say $10,000 for making a record, and then you know, $10,000 in touring expenses. And then you've got 20 or something % going to like managers and bookers. So you've probably got like $50K to split between 4 of you. And now that's definitely not enough, right? So it is so hard to become a band and go full time with it because you have to make so much. Like the bands that are making $100K net are pretty big.
Yeah, for sure. That's a pretty big band.
That's a pretty big band. Now, if you're one person and you're netting $100K, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and this is also one thing we should note. This is assuming that you're doing all the work anyway. So you'd be making the same amount of revenue as a solo or under your own name as you would under a band. Mm-hmm. I think we should definitely make that distinction because, of course, we're like, oh, well, yeah, one person making $100K versus 4, but that's kind of assuming that you have the ability to make that same $100K by hiring your bandmates for whatever you pay them per show. That distinction is pretty important. But yeah, I mean, $100K net, and you like, what's wrong with that? That sounds pretty good to me.
Really, we shouldn't even be talking about $100K net as a solo artist. We should be talking about that same $25K.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that all of a sudden is an attainable thing for one person to do.
Yeah.
One person can work hard, and if you're talented and you are smart and work hard, you can make that happen just as a giggy musician, let alone like actually building a brand where you've got streaming residuals and syncs and stuff like that. So it's so much more attainable to actually build like a meaningful income by being a solo artist. Like it's infinitely easier.
Poor bands right now. They're probably just like, what is going on here? Yeah.
But it's just like a hard truth.
It is. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just simple economics. No, but it is though, really. Like it really is. If you have the ability to make that money and you're doing all the work anyway, why would you split it?
Yeah.
Like, why are you going to pay someone 25, or pay 3 other people $25,000 each?
Yeah.
When you could do it yourself.
Now, yeah, we are making quite an assumption that this one person will have all of the skills, like the business skills and the booking skills, all of the skills needed to generate a business that can do that kind of money. But it's possible. It's totally possible.
Yeah, the threshold is just so much lower. Yeah, that's like, it's just, you don't have, like you said, you don't have to be making $100K net. I mean, even if you're making $30K net as a solo, that's 30% of what we're talking about. You should be able to. I shouldn't say you should, but I mean, I think you have the ability to do that if you're, in a somewhat successful band, or if you have somewhat, you've got some of the skills to book and to, generate revenue in your business model. Mm-hmm. 30% of what we're talking about is probably doable, and it's still more than you'd be making in a 4-piece.
Yeah, exactly. I think a misconception is like that you're going to have less of a team to accomplish things. Like, okay, like if we have 4 band members, we're going to have more man or woman power to like really delegate and get things done. But if you think about the increased cash flow as being a solo artist, now you can actually hire specialists to do some of those jobs as well.
Yeah,
you have more money to like invest back into the business to people that are actually good at doing those jobs. So that's kind of a cool angle to consider as well, rather than trying to like argue with your bass player to like actually do something, like set up the merch table. No, I'm just
Set up the merch table. There it is.
But you could like build something on your own and then generate some cash reserves and then try and grow the business by hiring some specialists. I think there's something cool in that. But there's also, I know, there's something cool in developing your own team and becoming a really in-house kind of like powerhouse unit with a band. There's definitely something cool in that. So should we talk about some disadvantages?
Yeah, definitely. Because right now it just sounds like everybody go solo.
Every lead singer just quit their band.
yeah, which is definitely not what we're trying to do here. It's just more, I just want to reiterate it's just, if you're in a position where you're doing all the work, you should be compensated accordingly. And that's basically what it is. It's just trying to prevent being taken advantage of, because it happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily it's not like the band knowingly taking advantage of you as the person who does all the work, but it's just the natural, you start a band, you want to start a band, 4 people, it's equal, whatever. But it doesn't have to be that way. Anyway, let's go to disadvantages.
All right. The workload is hugely increased.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into what we were just talking about. The idea is that hopefully you can relieve some of that workload by hiring specialists to do some of the jobs. But at the beginning, especially, the workload's going to be huge. Actually, it'll always be huge. Just to push back on that point a little bit, the management side of things is definitely going to be like less though, because you don't have to manage a team at the beginning. It's just all you. So there's a little bit of a cool thing there. But it's going to be a lot of work for sure. And
that might be okay to some people if they're already doing the majority of the work.
Exactly.
And if you already are, then this disadvantage is not a disadvantage.
Yeah.
So.
But maybe there's more in this point than I first realized, in that most people are trying to start their band or music career on the side. And you just might not have the ability to put in that many hours. So having a team of other people around you is just a necessity. So that's definitely worth considering.
For sure. Okay, this is one. So the next point, I'm going to skip one here on our list.
Cool.
The creative benefits of working with a team. You obviously don't have that. And I think that this is another big depends point, because for some people, they want to write their songs on their own, and they might even produce the songs on their own. And so this point to them doesn't matter. But I think there are a lot of people out there, especially bands or in a band configuration, who do like to write together like we did.
Right.
We write in a room, everyone writes together. It's a collaborative effort, a collaborative creative effort. And you don't get that if your name's on the poster. You don't get that.
Yeah.
So that should be a really big indicator. And if you should go band or solo, if you really like to write together, it's going to be pretty difficult to be the one with your name on the poster if you're writing with your band.
If they're bringing songs to the table and stuff like that, that's pretty tricky.
Yeah, it is.
Worth noting that still does happen sometimes. Sometimes there are bands that like are labeled as like the lead singer's name, but everybody does write, and that's compensated in the back end of like the partnership agreement and stuff like that, which is totally fine, just as long as everybody agrees.
Yeah, that's the thing. The band name could just be the person's name, but it might be structured in a way that people are equity owners in the company, whatever that. Yeah. The company could be called Malcolm Owen Flood, but it could be structured the same way as Band of Rascals was.
Right. Yeah. It's a branding decision at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But I think if you do really like having the creative input of other people, it'll be pretty difficult for the most part to say, I'm just going to pay you per show and I'm making all the decisions and that's it. I think that's a pretty difficult one. But
yeah,
again, it depends. If you're already doing all the writing and you'd rather do all the writing, then it kind of becomes an advantage, I guess.
Yeah. Another disadvantage in that creative sphere is making business decisions. It's hard making all the decisions and not being able to bounce ideas off people necessarily. It can really help having somebody in your corner that's like able to kind of like balance out your crazy.
Yeah. Well, also to listen to your ideas and tell you if they're good or shit, because honestly, I go through this all the time of like, and I'm sure everyone else does too, when you're working on music, for example, and you're like, you've been working on the same loop for 2 hours and you're like, this actually sounds like shit. I'm just going to erase it all. But having someone else there. And this goes for business decisions as well. It's not just creative decisions, but just having someone else there to tell you if something's good or not, that's a huge positive if you need that reinforcement.
Definitely. There is ways to get around that as well. Like not being able to bounce stuff off of your equity, like shareholders, like your bandmates, aka. But like, for example, you could start a mastermind group with other like-minded people or even totally different people. Actually, I totally encourage that. You should have people in your mastermind group that aren't the same as you. That's like the whole point in a way. They should be, there's always like a crossover, but if somebody's like an entrepreneur doing a solo coffee shop venture, that could work. There's actually like a ton of parallels that would work there. Or somebody's doing like an internet marketing makeup company or something. They're going to be able to help you so much more than you know. But totally tangent. But you can fill that hole creatively in other ways, I think. Like Marcus, you send me stuff you're working on, productions you're working on as a solo creator all the time. And I'm able to give you my thoughts. I'm not expecting to own anything for that.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to come from equity owners. And that's actually a really good point, because if that's a big hang up for you, then there are options.
And somebody that's creative enough to succeed as a solo artist is going to be able to figure out all of these problems. And if you're not, that's a good sign that you need the support of a band around you.
Yeah, for sure.
You need a team, because these are easy problems in the scheme of what you're going to be up against.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking of problems, money. It is way more money for you if you are like as an investor in your own company. You have to come up with all the money on your own. And that's pretty tricky because, as we know, being a musician is expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's no like combined capital where if like, okay, like we need to jump on this opportunity and get a song out because the radio said they'll play it for us or whatever. And, we need $1,500 to go and do a song in the studio. You have to shell that out because your band's not going to anymore because they're hired guns.
Yeah, exactly. You get all the revenue, but you also get all the expenses.
Yes, exactly. So that's worth considering. Again, ideally, if you're doing things right, that you're going to make way more by doing gigs and off the success of the song, that it's worth it, but maybe it's not. Kind of worth noting that like record labels often go after the ownership of songs for that reason, They seem to see value in that, right? So I don't know, worth considering. It's funny, we keep giving it disadvantages and then we like spin it.
Yeah, totally. Because that's the thing. The advantages and disadvantages of this list could be seen on either side depending on your situation, right? Like these disadvantages could actually be advantages depending on how you have it structured or how you like to work. Like we have a point here that it's more lonely, which I'm sure we're going to get to next, but that could also be an advantage for some people because some people thrive in solitude.
Right.
And they don't like to be, it's a bit of a distraction to be surrounded by people or to have opinions of other people. They like to work in solitude. So being more lonely, it can be an advantage to some people. It really just depends on where you are and how you work. That being said, I think the majority of people would find the loneliness, it would suck. So I do find that the majority, like for me, I definitely like being surrounded by creative people.
Right.
There are parts that I like of being in a band and there are parts that I don't like. One of them is to have other people around me while I'm working, basically.
Right.
I don't like to work in solitude that much.
Yeah. Performing in solitude's the worst.
I've never done it, so I wouldn't know, and I don't ever want to do it.
I mean, like that's obviously just me saying that. Like our mutual friend Jesse Roper can get on stage and have the best time of his life by himself.
Yeah,
me not so much. I thrive off feeding off each other, and so this is totally going to apply differently to different people, but worth considering. And again, we're not trying to make every like songwriting contributor in the band think that they should quit their band and go out on their own at all.
Yeah.
But there has been a lot of situations where I've just met somebody that is this person and they're just too scared to go out on their own, essentially. So like, I think that could be some imposter syndrome, or they just, maybe the successful musicians they know are in bands. So it just seems like that's the path they should take. And I think a big part of it is just having that conversation with musicians is uncomfortable. Just like kind of being to the point that, hey, like I appreciate you being here and gigging with me, but this is my thing and this is how it's going to work. Like that's a tough conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, it's like just even saying it like that sounds kind of shitty.
Yeah.
It's the reality of it. Like no one wants to have that conversation with somebody. And I think that can sour a relationship pretty early on. That's the thing too, to have that relationship at the beginning of, jamming with new people, that can really take down the fun of the band really quickly. Having that conversation, being like, hey, I know you guys are having fun, but this is mine. So what I say goes. And you don't have to say it like that, but I mean, in reality, that is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that can really sour a relationship quickly. So that conversation is avoided. And then you find yourself down the line splitting revenue or when you should be taking all of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, this is definitely it depends.
Yeah.
Don't go and quit your band and go solo just because we've named some advantages here. There's a lot that goes along with that. A lot of work that has to be put in.
Yeah. Yeah. I would never do it. I would have never have toured as a musician if I hadn't gone the band route.
Yeah.
So like I'm an example of somebody that's not interested in this at all.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I think it's worth mentioning that there could be a compromise between these two camps where maybe your band does do some writing with you, but you kind of bring the core of the song and, but you're open to their contribution. So maybe you work out a deal where they're getting some points on the songs, but still paid as musicians and not owning the masters or like something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely some more creative ideas you could have to how to solve this problem if you want to kind of have a mix of things. So keep that in mind and maybe even encourage that. It's not something you really hear about people doing that often.
Yeah, well, because you could be the whole owner of the company, but they could have songwriting credit.
Yeah.
And so they don't actually participate in the revenues of the business per se, but they'll get their share of the songwriting.
In the back end, or maybe their contribution is worth a little bit of the business or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But so figure that out on your own. But it's an option for sure.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from this for me would be that it doesn't have to be a band that's split 4 ways or 5 ways. And I think that's the way that most people do it because they don't want to have the conversation. But I think it's got to be fair. And so people need to make sure that they're making it fair for them and fair for everybody else.
Yeah.
The other side of the coin is you can't be the 100% owner of the company and then have 3 hired musicians or something and give them jobs like setting up the merch table.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly. That's
not very
taking
fair.
advantage of it. Yeah. I'm going back to advantages here. Something I've always been like jealous of, not that I ever really wanted to do it, but like saw as really valuable, again, going back to our friend Jesse Roper, is that he can do solo shows as Jesse Roper. And like right now with like the quarantine thing, he did a couple of those, right? Where he just did like the intimate concert series thing. Yeah. And that's way harder for a band to pull off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Well, in multiple ways, right? Revenue based. That's the thing. It's not worth it for bands to go and play the small shows when they're not making that much money.
Right.
It's just really not worth it. But if you're one person, then that's definitely worth it.
Yeah. And the one person makes all the money. But say you're a band and your singer goes and does that. Does the band get to split that money? Yeah.
Right? Especially if they're using the name and playing the songs. Yeah.
It's a really messy conversation all of a sudden. So that's a bit of an advantage there. And, as the solo artist, he doesn't have to feel guilty about being like, hey guys, this one's just me. Or for whatever reason, like, for example, going back to Jesse, just because this is like something we were a part of, is we went on tour with him, but his drummer couldn't make it. So we just hired a different one and it was fine. Nobody's upset. They're friends.
Yeah. It's basically just trying to get people thinking about how to structure this in a fair way. That's really what it comes down to.
So let's wrap this up. I think there's a lot to think about in there. And thank you, Danny Blonde, for getting us started on that idea. If anybody has topics that they want covered, feel free to email us at yourbandsucksatbusiness@gmail.com or reach out to us on Instagram. That's actually better. And let's give a shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Again, if you appreciate what we're doing here, there's 2 things you can do. Number 1, share an episode that you like on your social media and tag us in it, please, actually, so we know that you did. We appreciate that. And it's like the best way to help us grow. And then second, you can subscribe to be a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/yourbandsucksatbusiness or go to our website, yourbandsucksatbusiness.com, and you'll find a link there. And we have some shout outs for our top tiered members. We've got Evan Miller of the Wild Romantics, Chris Erickson of Scove, who is also our podcast editor. If you're doing a podcast, reach out to him. Bernard of the Enrons, who I'm mixing another song for. Ryan of Venom and Spirit, all around legendary dude with great hair. Grady from Leather Apron Revival. They got some new music on the books as well. Lucas from Vogue Villains, who is always sharing our podcast. We love you, buddy. Thank you. Graham of Carmana, who is just the nicest guy I happen to have ever met. Kevin of Supreme Remedy, who also has some crazy hair, but he cut it. But now it's growing back, I noticed.
Nice.
And Rob Wilkinson / Rob Elo. He's got a new EP out that's totally worth checking out. It's great.
Also has some crazy hair.
Tay Fance, who is a buddy of ours. Marcus played drums on his stuff. Check him out. And then Carland from the band Mulligan, who I don't know very well, but I know they're dope. All right. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your support, and we will be back next week with another episode.